I think we're ready. All right. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Hopefully some more funneling as we get going. So today we're here to talk about confidential document exchange made simple, efficient, and secure with Microsoft 365. So really focusing on different document exchange scenarios in the insurance, finance, and legal sectors. Myself, I'm Logan Guest. I'm our VP of Sales and Customer Success. I've been at Envision IT/Extranet User Manager for 7 years, very focused on our pre-sales and account management, as well as the delivery of different projects on both the consulting and development side of our business, as well as the product side of our business. 3 key takeaways that we want to focus on for this webinar. The first one is ensuring that there's business satisfaction. We're ensuring IT and compliance, they can enjoy peace of mind. So, you'll see it throughout the presentation, but a big focus for us is leveraging that Microsoft 365 foundation from a tool perspective. Streamlining processes for improved productivity for all parties. So that's not just streamlining things internally, but also making it easy for the different external parties that you're actually collaborating with. And lastly, controlling your data and corporate brand while leveraging Microsoft's enterprise-grade security in your Microsoft 365 tenant. This is a Teams webinar. Chat will be open throughout the webinar. I know there's a couple of folks from our team that are available to answer questions. If it makes sense, I might even interject Peter and say, hey, if you have a good question that's at that point in the webinar, happy to make it more of an open dialogue. Most importantly, enjoy and hopefully you learn a thing or two. Some quick background on Extranet User Manager. It's really a brand of software products by Envision IT. And Envision IT has been a leader in the Microsoft 365 space for quite a few years now. And our whole focus as a software brand is that we make Microsoft simple. Now we know we can't make all of Microsoft simple, but really focusing in on how do we make it simple for external stakeholders to collaborate, and leverage Microsoft technology in doing so, and really focusing on that, user experience, making it easy for users to collaborate, share information, collect information, all those different sorts of scenarios. And the big thing is making sure that, we touched on it before on key takeaways, but IT and compliance, they're involved at the beginning and they're comfortable with what is being set up from a permissions perspective, but ultimately empowering those in the business to do what they need to, collaborate with who they need to without submitting a ticket to IT. So what I'll do, I'll hand it over to Peter now, and he's going to give some more background on these different data room scenarios.
Thanks, Logan. Yeah, Peter Carson here, president, founder of Envision IT and Extranet User Manager, also a 13-time Microsoft M365 MVP. So do a lot of speaking, not just through webinars like this, but going to be busy at conferences in Europe. And in the springtime, also run a local, used to be the Toronto SharePoint Users Group. We've rebranded as the Toronto Microsoft 365 User Group. Actually, if you're in the Toronto area, I'm going to be doing a live session at the Microsoft Canada offices, which if you haven't been to, they're an awesome location downtown Toronto. I think it's April 17th. It's third Wednesday of the month. All my contact info is here. We are going to be sharing the deck and the recording, so you'll have access to all of that as we go through. So a quick agenda of what we want to cover off is start just with some level set of what is a virtual data room and what issues does it address? Is it the right thing for you? We're going to focus specifically on financial insurance and legal scenarios in our discussions here. But hopefully, if you don't fit into one of those industry verticals, feel free to extrapolate because the same things apply in virtually any industry from there. We're going to talk specifically about our data room component as part of our Extranet User Manager product, and we're going to go through a number of demo scenarios. I'm actually going to have a new client of ours, Susie from Vector Business Solutions, join us as well, and we're going to kind of talk through live some of the stuff that we're doing with Vector right now. As Logan mentioned, chat's open, so feel free to ask questions as we go through there. I probably won't be watching it myself as I'm talking, but Logan, feel free to jump in if there's a relevant question right at that point in the discussion. So let's start with what is a virtual data room? It is by definition, a secure online repository. It's a spot for document storage and distribution. It may be a spot where you want to, securely distribute documents out to a wide group of stakeholders, or it may be that you need to collect information from them, or maybe it's two-way and you need to collaborate and work back and forth through them. And you might say, well, I could do that through Microsoft 365, just through the sharing features that are in there, and that's absolutely true. But as your needs get more sophisticated, as the scale grows, having some structure to that becomes a concern. We're working with a lot of different clients in a lot of different sectors, particularly municipal. We're doing a lot of work in. I'm going to be presenting at the local MISA Ontario group next Friday, and we're going to be touching on data rooms as part of that. And some of the work that we're doing in the City of Sudbury with City of Vaughan, particularly around project work and repositories around that, where you've got large capital projects and external subcontractors. How do you exchange those documents effectively back and forth through there? And that's really what the virtual data room is all about. And why do we need it? For those of you that have been involved in sort of contract negotiations or back and forth from a documents point of view, you're probably familiar with the pain of email ping pong, where things just keep bouncing back and forth. Hey, can you send me this? No, that's the wrong version. I need that one. It just becomes a nightmare from a productivity point of view. It's also inherently insecure. I mean, the amount of cyber attacks that are initiated through email phishing is the vast majority, and the less you can do through email and through links, the better from that point of view. Dark IT risks, the IT and compliance may say, hey, we're just going to lock down sharing because we don't want external sharing happen because it's not secure. They haven't actually locked it down. They've just pushed it into the shadows, and the business will work around that. They'll go back to email attachments. They'll set up Dropbox or ShareFile or any number of third-party tools to do that document sharing. And really, you've lost that investment you've made in Microsoft by doing that. So like I said, we're going to focus on some particular industries, but feel free to extrapolate and think about this in your own scenario as well. So that brings us around to why Microsoft 365. And really, our goal isn't to get everybody in the world to use Microsoft 365. Microsoft's actually doing an awesome job on that. And from an enterprise penetration point of view, they're by far the dominant vendor from that point of view. So if most enterprises are already using Microsoft 365 from an internal staff point of view, why not use it from an external point of view as well? So you've got this really robust security set. You've got a massive investment, $1 billion plus a year that Microsoft invests. They run red and blue teams that defend and attack and run scenarios. They're watching what's happening in the world. We're working with governments and large enterprises around the world from a cyber security point of view. If you can take advantage of all that, that's awesome. So don't take it out into yet another platform. Keep it in your Microsoft 365. That's really our goal here is. And certifications are important to you, which many organizations they are. Microsoft's got them up the wahoo. They've got your standard SOC 2 and ISO 27001, which are information security standards. But they've got here in Canada we have protected B assets, which are highly confidential government documents from a sensitivity point of view. Those are actually cleared to be used in Microsoft 365 because they've gone through the certification process. It's same in the US from a government point of view. So lots of compliance certifications from that perspective. So let's talk about what an EUM data room is then. So, we talked about the generic concept of a virtual data room. Our data room is really that generic concept built on top of Microsoft 365. And while it leverages all the Microsoft Enterprise class security under the hood, the goal here is both to keep it simple and to keep your brand present through all of that. You're going to see Contoso in a lot of our applications like we have on the screenshots here. If you're not familiar with Contoso, is a made-up Microsoft company they use for demo purposes, and we're kind of doing the same here. But the concept is, have your brand, have your look and feel, have your URL, have your email domain be part of the data room. So it feels like your organization, but under the hood, it's all built on Microsoft 365. And the key thing is that while we are a SaaS company and we do host the data room and the Extranet User Manager product on behalf of our clients, we host it in Microsoft Azure. So it's already in the Microsoft Data Center. But we don't actually host any of your data. All of your data lives in your Microsoft 365 tenant. So, rather than having to worry about, hey, we just signed up with this shadow IT external file sharing service, all our documents are sitting in that service. data sovereignty and compliance, how important is that? Is that done properly with that vendor? And what happens when we leave that vendor? How do we get all of our stuff out of that service? You don't really need to concern yourself with that. With our data room, it's all in your Microsoft 365 itself from that point of view. And even the people that you're inviting in, they're being invited as what's called guests into your Microsoft 365 tenant. So all their profile, their user details, everything else are all stored in your tenant. They're not in our systems. We're very much built on top of that Microsoft stack throughout. So let's talk about some of the hidden costs of insecure sharing. As I said before, you may mandate that we don't do external sharing. You haven't really achieved that. You just said, hey, maybe you're not going to do it through Microsoft 365, but it's going to happen through other ways. And those other ways may not be secure. So what's the cost to that? Obviously data loss is a big impact, not just from a productivity and intellectual property point of view, but what's actual cost of losing control of your own intellectual property. You may use other services, other third-party SaaS software, shadow IT software. That's a financial drain. You're already spending probably a pretty big check on Microsoft, and it can do what you need to do. So why do you need to write another check to a third-party service that does the same thing? Then maybe not as well. Obviously, cyber attacks is a big deal. Understanding risk mitigation. What's the likelihood of a cyber attack, and what's the impact of that are two key measures from a cyber security point of view. By keeping it in Microsoft 365, you're dramatically lessening the likelihood. The impact is still there. You need to put the appropriate controls in place to say how sensitive is this information, and what's the cost to us as an organization. You may be a healthcare or a healthcare related organization. In the insurance space that we're going to talk about, personal health information back and forth is a common scenario that we see. Done improperly, that's a huge potential impact. If you leak people's personal health information out, that's a big deal. You're going to get sued. There's some real downside from that point of view. Obviously, you've made this investment in Microsoft 365. You may not be fully utilizing that. So, how do you get your full benefit from that investment that you're making? And let's not forget the process management side of it. The inefficient processes kills productivity, lengthens deal cycles and working cycles. It's detrimental to productivity as a whole. So anything you can do to improve those efficiencies and also check off all these other boxes is an awesome thing. And the classic example is the email ping pong that I was talking about. I just went through this. It was a brutal process. We've just gone through some funding with some government agencies and some commercial lenders, and of course, corporate B2B financing. There's a lot of documents that need to go back and forth. They need to see, all the corporate documents, the P&Ls, trial balance, sales forecasts, pitch decks, all of that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of that was going back and forth through email. We actually tried to use our own data room, the big commercial banks. We just couldn't get past their IT security to say, hey, let's light up. They had their own way of working, which was very email focused. They actually had what they call secure email portals to exchange the documents back and forth. But it became a nightmare. I mean, we had legal counsel on both sides that are, we're at the final stages of the deal. We're just trying to get it signed and done and get funding in place. We'd actually frozen because we were changing our commercial banking as part of this as well. We'd frozen our commercial accounts with our previous bank, and we hadn't lit them up with a new one. So we're actually hamstrung as a company. We couldn't do any financial transactions. We could get money in, we couldn't pay anybody out. And it was all getting held up around this email exchange back and forth. At one point, the legal counsel on the one side needed some documents signed. They went over to an insurance broker because there was insurance certifications that we needed to show. They literally took the screenshot of the document and used Paint to paste a signature on it and send it back and thought that was acceptable. And it lit up a whole flurry of back and forth. But, it added days, weeks, even months to the whole process. So it's just bad. We've got to get away from using email as a document repository. And it's not just the inefficiencies of the back and forth, it's the confusion that results from that. If I take a even one document, but often multiple documents, and put them as an attachment to an email, and I send them to a bunch of people that need to do something with it. Those people may forward them on to other people from there, and you end up with this, lots of different versions of the truth out there. How do you get that back to a single version from there? It becomes almost impossible from that point of view. So it's just wrong from that perspective. I've been saying, from a SharePoint point of view, this concept of a single version of the truth, where you have one version of the document and you share links to it out to all the parties, just works so much better from that point of view. It even lights up things like co-authoring in collaboration scenarios, which is awesome. Working on this deck itself, it's not just me presenting. Irina did a great job pulling it together. Julian and Logan have their thoughts in it. We can all be contributing into it as part of that. And we can have external parties. This is the third in the series of webinars. The previous two were with two of our partners, Essential and Stratus. They had their teams in the deck and editing and authoring as part of that as well. It just works so much better from that perspective. So this next one, I think is a little tongue-in-cheek, but it's kind of fun to say, hey, do you need the data room? And marketing, of course, is structured. The answer is yes for most cases, but it's actually true. So yes, if you have frequent or routine external sharing needs, and you've got something scalable that's going to go beyond just sort of ad hoc sharing. Diverse user capabilities within your organization. Not everybody understands sensitivity and how to share appropriately. So how do you make that easy to use? How do you put the guardrails up that people don't do the wrong things? Because oversharing is a big problem in the industry as well. Even in Microsoft 365, they've made it easy to share, but that opens up its own risks from that point of view. So how do we make sure we've got the proper compliance and control and audit and oversight in as part of that? Yes, if you're just doing internal document exchange, you don't need a data room around that. Or if it's public information that has no, intellectual property concerns as part of that, that's fine from that perspective. Informal, small scale, maybe you're not big enough to warrant it. We're going to be bringing Susie in from Vector Business Solutions. Vector's not a big company, neither is Envision IT. We use these tools ourselves. It helps our business from that point of view. I would say if you're not concerned about a low risk of data breach, you're probably not thinking about the right things, because everybody should be concerned from that perspective. So let's actually dive into to some of our scenarios. And Susie, this is probably a good time for you to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell a bit about yourself, your company, Vector Business Solutions, and how you came to find us and work together.
Peter, thank you. And thank you to you and Logan for allowing me to be a part of this. We're really excited to be working with Envision IT and EUM as the data room for us. Our firm has been around for 17 years, and we've been 100% remote the whole time. And we provide outsourced accounting and controller services, as well as projects around QuickBooks, setting up inventory management and things like that for our clients. So we do both projects and repeated ongoing outsourced accounting work. And a lot of the challenges that Peter talked about are things that were really heavy on my mind as a technologist and also as a business owner. The risks around data sharing with our clients, the multiple systems we were using, third-party software, and the fact that we weren't leveraging our Microsoft environment. Our team was using it extensively, but then we were having to use third-party software to share with our clients securely, and I didn't feel that was as secure as it could be. And I was also concerned about having to teach our own team how to use multiple tools.
Thanks, Susie. So, we've only been working together for I guess a matter of weeks, sort of early March. That we started the engagement, and the initial engagement was really to take the out of the box data room and just get it going as a proof of concept in your environment. So quickly as we started talking, particularly you and I, there's a lot of parallels between your business and ours. We're both consulting organizations. We both have project engagements with clients and document sharing needs around that. So I'd offer to kind of expand the scope without a cost to you to say, hey, let's think about what we could do on our own business on the Envision IT External User Manager side that has a lot of parallels to the Vector side, and how do we fit those together and work together. So what I thought I'd do is actually use the data room that we've set up in our customer portal, and Vector in particular, to kind of go through that scenario and talk about that. Okay. So this is our live customer and partner portal. Now we run two brands. We run both Extranet User Manager and Envision IT. Extranet User Manager is the product side of the business. Envision IT is more the Microsoft 365 consulting. I mean, Susie, you're kind of interacting with both sides because we're providing consulting and product to you. The portal itself morphs. So if a client knows us more as Envision IT, we can go into the portal.envisionit.com and it has the Envision IT branding on it. Or we can go into the Extranet User Manager portal and have the EUM branding on it. And that brand is very important to say, hey, we want to put your organization's brand forward as part of this. The two portals are actually the same portal. You're going to see the same content. It's just a different skin on top from there. And we provide our clients access in through a login. I guess one of the first things we should talk about is how we do that. So I'm going to go ahead and log in as an Envision IT user here. So I'm using my pcarson at Envision IT corporate email account. Susie, when you come in with your Vector Business Solutions account, and Vector runs Microsoft 365 yourself. So the advantage there is when you're coming into our portal, we've invited you in as a guest. You don't have to remember another password. You don't have to do anything different from that point of view. You're literally using your Vector credentials to come into this portal from this perspective. So it makes it very seamless from that perspective. You know, we use a tool called 1Password to manage our credentials. I literally have thousands of credentials across all these different client systems and personal systems and things like that. It's a nightmare. And having one less in this scenario to say, hey, I just use my own organizational credentials, I really like from that point of view. I mean, if you weren't using Microsoft 365, you'd go through what's called a one-time passcode where Microsoft would email you a passcode when you went to sign in, and you'd still have easy access into the portal without having to remember a password. But our clients are, you know, by and large, invested in Microsoft 365 themselves, so it works really well from that perspective. So I've signed in. I see a bunch of different partners and clients that we're working with here. In your case, if you were to sign in, I mean, you would just see the Vector Business Solutions, and because you've only got that one group, it just kind of takes you straight through and into there. And this is very much still a work in progress. This is not a finished concept. We're actually going to do a little live design thinking between Susie and myself here as we talk through. So we're now at the landing page to the data room for Vector in the EUM Envision IT client portal. So we can see all the people involved, and that's an important part of it, is who are you working with on both sides. So Susie, you know, I see yourself there, and Jenna from your team, there's myself, Maha, who's the PM that's kind of running the project, Ron that's been doing a bunch of the development work, Anish that's been working with your team to actually get it deployed into your environment. You can actually click into those and say, hey, like, I want to know more about Maha. So here's a little background about Maha and connection over to her LinkedIn and such. So part of it is just building that social network as part of it as well. But if we come into the site itself, so we're in the EUM data room here, but it's actually surfacing up things from the client site. And we've got one client project going with you here that we're highlighting. I mean, there may be multiple projects as we engage over time with you. And hope you don't mind. I mean, I'm a fan of transparency. We're literally sharing everything, including budget, that's live as part of it. I mean, we've taken the concept of having a statement of work that we sign off with you and pulling that together with the project documents. And some of this came from your side as well. I mean, you've got a similar type of scenario. Maybe talk about how you engage with your clients, both from an ongoing and a project point of view, and we can layer it into what we're showing here.
Yeah, well, when we engage with our clients, we do an engagement letter using one software product, and that's a kind of our overriding document. And then we do a series of statements of work for projects or ongoing services. And again, that's using another system. And then throughout that process, we're gathering data from our clients, usually using an upload tool, which is a separate tool. And then we populate that into our own private environment, which is Microsoft. And that's, again, where I felt the challenge of all these disparate systems and wanting to give our clients a seamless environment and a seamless way of working. And it just really wasn't working that way. Or we were shielding them from that with a variety of behind the scenes, moving documents around and copying things around. So that's kind of how we've been engaging in the past. And we like Microsoft for security and audit trail purposes, but exposing that to our clients involves a lot of knowledge around Microsoft. So that's what's a challenge for us.
Yeah, and I think the key thing there is if you can templatize it so that it's a repeatable, defined pattern, it becomes much easier. I mean, behind this, let's actually have a look under the hood for a second here to SharePoint Online. So this is a team site in our Microsoft 365, but there's a template with how we provision it to work with our clients. So we've got things like links and feature documents and document activity in here. And I'm seeing my view as a staff member, but we actually continue that theme of transparency. We like to share most of what we're doing with our clients. So if I come into the documents library in SharePoint here, we have a number of folders that we create as standard structure in here. And Susie, you and I have been talking about the same sort of, you have a standard structure to how you set up your Microsoft 365 today. But like you say, you then take parts of that and put it into a third-party tool. So you got stuff in two places. If we can keep it all in one spot and say, hey, let's have it all in Microsoft 365, that just works better for everybody. So, I mean, this is our structure that we've set up from an Envision IT customer template point of view. And for the most part, Susie, you get to see everything that's in here. The only exception is private documents folder. I mean, there's always things that you want to work on that you're not maybe ready to share with a client. This is a place to do that kind of work. But everything else, we make freely available to the clients from there. In fact, for the most part, a lot of this stuff, we allow you to contribute and work with on there. I mean, the top level, things like agreements. So just like yourselves, you have an engagement letter. We have a master services agreement that's sort of executed once with the client at the top level. Agreements is a good spot to keep that. We have statements of work, so we keep in a quotes folder, but we share that so you have visibility to it and you're able to see it. We're a big fan of recordings. I mean, we're recording this webinar, but we actually record most of our meetings. We use Copilot to, summarize and do all sorts of cool things from there. So we've got a recordings folder in there. We've got the invoice history. So again, you can see all those details. But then as we drill down into the projects folder, we can actually create folders for each of the projects that we do for our clients, much like you do with your one-time projects. And if I come into the EUM trial, this is literally the project that we're working on with you. We can see the different documents that we're working on. There were some kickoffs, there were some Azure AD reviews that we did with your team, and those are all there and available to you. But the challenge is, some people aren't familiar with SharePoint Online. This can be a little overwhelming. There's left nav, top nav, right nav, all these folders, all this structure, and the idea is to make it simple, to say, hey, let's put a pretty picture on it and make it easy to use from this point of view, that I can just drill into that project in here and see just the project documents related to it, and I can see some top level information about the project. What was the start and completion date? I know we're running past the March 15th because we kind of broadened what we wanted to do here, but the longer term, like this should actually be a live link, so you can click the link and go see the statement of work. It's something both sides often face is, hey, I'm in this, I'm doing things, thinking about things, like what did we say we were actually going to be doing? Or as you on the client side, what did I sign off on? And how are we tracking against that? Make that easy to go. I mean, one of the things that you raised was how do we automate some of the processes around this? Like getting those statements of work actually signed off. We use DocuSign from an electronic signature, but it's not integrated into this process. We take the documents, we upload them to DocuSign, we send them to you, put them back in here when we're done. And I'd love to see some more integration from that perspective. I mentioned that Microsoft is investment in the e-signature side of things, and they do have a SharePoint premium e-signature piece that they're just rolling out now. We should actually try it with you and Vector if you're up for it, because
we love that.
It's currently just in preview for US customers, so we're Canadian. We don't have access to it yet, but if you're okay being a guinea pig, we could certainly play around with that.
We'd love that, yeah.
So we could actually have a status on that document to say, hey, it's still pending signature, or it's being signed, and the client could just literally click in here and launch into a signature process right through that. I mean, the goal is let's keep it all in one spot and easier for your team and your clients. They know, hey, if I go here, I've got everything related to this.
Peter, to your point, a lot of our clients, we have a broad variety of technical knowledge in our client base. And I think for us, having a single kind of one-stop shop, for the technical clients, they'll love it because they realize what it takes to do that. And for the non-technical clients, it just makes it easy.
Yeah,
So I think for us, we see value in both kinds of clients.
Yeah. I mean, you can always get down into the underlying technical structure where you need to, but for the most part, you can do everything that you need right through here. If I click into these presentations, I'm literally going to launch into PowerPoint Online in my browser, or Word or Excel, whatever the case may be, as part of that. So we've just started deploying this out into your environment. Kind of paused on that while we were working on our side here now. I think we're close enough now to say, hey, let's take what we've done in our environment, bring it over onto your side. We won't have all the e-signature stuff there just yet,
Yep.
But I'd be keen to have you start kicking the tires with some clients and just see how this is all hanging together.
We're ready.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Lucy. So what I thought I'd do here is switch gears into some of the other scenarios. So the next one that I wanted to talk about is a financial loan application scenario. So like I said, just went through this experience very recently, and the pain involved in that. And it's kind of an experience that most people have done. Everybody's applied for a mortgage or a loan or a credit card or what have you, and there's often supporting documents that come in as part of that process. So let's have a look at what that could look like. So I'm going to switch gears into our demo portal. So this isn't the real customer portal I was showing you a minute ago, but our EUM demo tenant, which is a separate Microsoft 365 tenant. And we've put the Contoso branding on it, as an example of having a different brand to the portal. So imagine I'm coming in as a potential customer of Contoso who wants to apply for a loan. I mean, the first thing I need to do is to get an account on the system. I need to prove who I am and authenticate so that I can do all this securely. So I'm actually going to change my email address just so it doesn't get picked up as a pre-existing one, and then go ahead and hit continue. One of the first challenges that we were trying to solve was people are often confused with these kind of portals. Have I already registered? Do I have an account? Do I not? Do I go down the registration path, but I get stuck because I actually created an account a year ago and I don't remember? Let's just remove that complexity. Let's just have one box there, put your email address in, and we'll figure out if you've got an account already and take you in, or we need to go through a registration process and capture some more information about you. And these registration forms can take a lot of different structures. This is a very simple one that just has a first and last name and company name. We can go into other registration forms and try out, a much longer, fuller one that has a lot more fields on it. And we can work with you as an organization to say, hey, what do you want to capture from this point of view? Now, not everybody needs this. Like Susie, in your case, you probably know who you want to bring into your customer portals, and you're just going to invite them in. But if you want to keep it more open, to say, hey, we are going to allow people to self-register, we can put rules in there to guide them down the right path and go through approvals and things like that as part of that.
I think, too, Peter, just to jump in, a key thing that Susie and I talked about was actually that ability to delegate invitations out to clients themselves. So empowering clients to do their own onboarding and offboarding was a big thing for Vector, because at the end of the day, like Susie, you might know a couple contacts at a client, but maybe there's more people that it would make sense to have that access, and to have that delegation model was quite important.
And to your point, Logan, the concern we have is if there's a point of contact at our client site, if we're managing the security across their team, somebody on their team leaves, or things that we may not be aware of, that creates risk. And
For sure.
We would prefer the client kind of manage who they're delegating to, et cetera. And we also like the ties into their Microsoft security for the same reason. If they have an employee leave and they've turned off their Microsoft account for that employee then loses access, which is exactly the result we want.
Yeah, that's a key one to remember, is that, because the other organization controls it and they're going to shut it down as soon as somebody leaves, they've effectively shut down access into your portal as well, which is always a common challenge with these sorts of portals. Is I don't know what's happened with the people in the other organization and if they're still there or not. They could still be in your list, but they'd have no access in. So that's at least reasonable from that point of view. I mean, we didn't talk about it in your situation, but I've set up the Vector client site on our side as invitation only, but I could actually make it what's called a private invitation group. We could put approvals on that to say, hey, we want to approve people coming in, but we don't know who we are. And we could actually give you, Susie, the private link here that you could distribute out to your team. Say, go ahead and register and go ahead and join our site on EUM's side, and we'll get the notification for that. Or we could actually put some automation to auto approve that to say, hey, if it comes from a Vector Business Solutions email domain, we're just going to trust them and let them in to make it very easy from that perspective. So yeah, there's a lot of control and granularity around how you manage this. We can make you what's called a membership manager, where you actually have rights to manage the membership in our group, in our tenant. So we trust you to do that properly, and you can go ahead and add people as you see fit through there. So there's a lot of delegation options available as part of that. So let's come back to the Contoso scenario. So imagine I've already set up an account. I'm going to use my existing account that's in there, so I don't have to go through the registration, and I want to go straight into the application process. So we've set a group here called Contoso Financial Loan Application, and the idea here is it's not a complete online application, but it's sort of an example of what somebody might start to fill in of who am I, what's my company, what loan amount am I applying for, what's my address information, and I want to start the loan application process. And it takes a couple of minutes, but what it does is it creates a data room for this application, and it makes the person who's filled out the application a member of that data room, so they can start to set up documents and such from there. Rather than waiting for that to happen, what I've done is I've actually, before the webinar, gone ahead and created one of those applications. If I come down to my Peter Carson group here, this was created by filling out that application. So all the stuff that I put in the application form of the company, the applicant, the loan amount, the loan status, is all recorded as metadata on the data room itself. And I can see myself as the person applying as a member of that. You know, if this was a larger application, and maybe I wanted Don, who's my CFO, or Faye, who's my senior accountant, to be part of this process, you know, I could potentially add them as members, and they can contribute into this data room here. Now, in this scenario, we're going to show off a particular feature that we didn't talk about in the Vector one, which is this idea of requested documents. You know, you may have a particular set of documents that you need from the person or people that you're working with in this data room. And in the loan application scenario, it's pretty common. You've got sort of my corporate deck and cap table, and all my financial statements and aging statements and things like that are a standard thing that I'm going to want on every deal. So we actually have an Excel template that allows us to define what those documents are. Now that can be changed afterwards as well. And then the person who's filled out the application, their job is to go collect all that stuff and start uploading it as part of the application. So I can just navigate to my local system here, grab a couple documents off of my local sample documents that I've got here. And the system wants me to know to tell it what types of things I'm uploading, so it can work against that checklist. So I've got my financial statements for last year. I'll tag that as financial, that is financial, and that is financial. I might want to put some comments in there to say which fiscal periods they are, to explain to the underwriter that's working on this particular one, but let's go ahead and upload that. So all these files are now getting uploaded from my local system up into the data room that's in our Microsoft 365. It takes a second, the page refreshes. I can see my financial statements that I've uploaded through there. And you notice on the list of requested documents here, financial statements has been taken out because we kind of knocked that one off. There's a bunch more I still need to put in there. So I could say, well, let's go get my aged AR as part of that as well. So I can go grab a couple more documents. Let's do my AR and AP. Oops, that's not my forecast. AP, AR, and go ahead and upload. We haven't built this part of the demo out just yet, but imagine, you know, if I was the underwriter or the loan officer on this, and I've got 10 or 100 different deals going on at the same time, and we've got all this data now that says, hey, where is this particular application at? Are we waiting for things from the client? Have they given us everything that we need and it's in our court and we need to take action on it? You know, we can start to build dashboards and reports against that to roll that up to say, hey, you've got, you know, 100 deals in the funnel, and you know, 70 of them you're still waiting for things from the client, and 30 of them they've given you everything you need, and it's over on your side to do your work. So you can really start to manage that process as you go through. If I mistag things in here, I can come back in quickly and just update that. But also, you know, I may discover as I'm going through the the application review process, there's some more documents that I need from the client. So as the person who's on the financial institution side, I can add additional documents to an Excel here that kind of manages the process. So we're trying to use out of the box tools like Excel that everybody understands from a financial perspective and make it simple. To Logan's point that, we make Microsoft simple is a key part of this. Now it takes a little bit longer to refresh the page this time because it's recognizing, hey, somebody updated that Excel that managed this whole process. So it's parsing the Excel and getting things ready and updating, and then we'll see the page refresh with that additional document in there as part of that.
Hey, Peter, just while this is loading. So James asked, could we spend some time on how permissions are configured and how external users are invited? So I figured spend a bit of time on that, kind of following this, assuming someone else needs access to this application, what would your process be?
So it's very dependent on the business scenario. Like let's start with this one here. The person that requested the application is the person that's going to be uploading documents in there. So typically we have different permission options we can set when we create a data room, and it's all underlying Microsoft 365. So we would use contribute, no delete in this example, which means I can upload as many documents as I want into there, but I can't remove anything out. Like if I upload something by mistake, I just need to put a comment in to say, hey, please ignore this, because we don't want people, sort of removing stuff from the data room as the application review is happening. Now, some of our clients have said, hey, we don't even want somebody to be able to overwrite an existing document. So if there's a conflict where I say, hey, I've uploaded a financial statement last year .pdf and I decide there's a new one I want to put in, we'll do auto renames to say, hey, you'll still have this one, and then you'll have a -1 version of it to make it obvious to say, hey, they've uploaded 2 copies of that. So it depends on the compliance side as to what makes sense from that perspective. Whereas in Susie's case, where we're working together on a project, we're going to want to provide collaborative access to most of that, so that when we're back in here, the documents that are in the project area, we literally want Susie and her team not just to be able to see it, but to contribute and edit those documents. So we want full contribute rights from that perspective. But when we're looking back at the underlying SharePoint structure for this, we said, hey, some of this stuff we want read only, some of it we want contribute access. That becomes part of the template. So when we run the scripts that says, hey, we want to create a new client data room portal for a client, it sets all that up. It says, hey, we're going to give whoever's a member of the vector group read-only access to a bunch of these folders, contribute access to others, and no access or not even any visibility to other ones as part of that. And that's really the key, is to make that a scripted, repeatable process, so you don't have to think about it each time. Because if there's 8 or 10 or 12 things you have to do each time you set up a client site, you're going to miss one of them. You're going to get one of them wrong. So it's important to have some automation and some process around that. And we've got things like an open source tool that we've built for provisioning teams and sites that we can use for these sorts of scenarios. We work with a third-party tool called Orchestry that does similar kind of stuff as well. So we haven't gotten to this point of the conversation, Susie, of how do we want to sort of templatize and structure your client sites so that they're built in a consistent way, and nobody has to make a decision about doing all the right things correctly through there. You just say, hey, I need a client site, go. Wait 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long it takes for that process to run, and everything's set up for you. But back to the original question, Logan, it's really the securities that are being applied at the Microsoft level inside of Microsoft 365. We're not building a security layer on top. We're building a process to make it easy to use what Microsoft already provides you.
Yeah, and then another question from James was just around, if you have different types of content and different vendors, do you need multiple data rooms? And I mean, the answer for that would be you'd likely just go and use the web part to create a new data room for that scenario. I think what you can do, it depends on the scenario. Like Susie's, you could have a single group with multiple data rooms under that, or you could have a group, like a one-to-one relationship as well between them. Yeah,
and you also need to understand what's the sensitivity of the information related to that. You might have different places that denote different sensitivity. We were talking about this with City of Sudbury this week, where they've turned off external sharing for now while they're trying to figure this all out, and they have different sensitivity of information. Sometimes they just want to collaborate with external citizens and get sort of a community leadership brainstorming area going. That's fairly low sensitivity. Where another situation, they had police, which is separate from the city, wanted to come in and exchange documents and work on documents, and that was very high sensitivity. And you want to apply different rules around that. You can say, hey, in the first scenario, maybe we don't want to enforce things like multi-factor authentication because it's too onerous and general citizens are going to get confused with that, and the security of the information is not that high to worry about it. Whereas, personnel records and HR stuff and police services, very high sensitivity. We want to enforce much stricter rules from a security access point of view. So it can either be, where does somebody go to make that request, could decide that, or it could be part of the request itself to self-identify, what sensitivity level is this and what rules need to apply as part of that. Because it's not just the permissions, it's how are you enforcing the broader security as people come into the data room. You got a lot of power there available in Microsoft, but you want to balance it and make sure that you're enforcing the right amount for the right type of content.
For sure. Yeah. And the other point that does come up a lot in these conversations is around guest users and Microsoft licensing. There tends to be there's always a sense of confusion around that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the short answer is there really is no license requirements to bring guests into your Microsoft 365. There's caveats around that. If they're doing things in Power Platform or Power BI, there is licensing requirements. But what we're showing here, where we just want to do document exchange and guest users, you don't need to license those users. You do have to be careful. They actually need to be external people. If half of your workforce that are employees of your company are not knowledge workers and they don't have Microsoft 365 licenses, you can't just call them guests and bring them in for free. Microsoft doesn't like that. They'll audit you and wrap you for that. But if they are truly external, they're other organizations, they're outside of your company, absolutely. I mean, the only caveat in there is if you want to use some of the advanced security features like Azure AD or Enter ID Premium 1 or Premium 2, you can bring up to 50,000 people a month in for no additional cost. Once you get beyond that, you have to start paying extra. Reality is we don't have that many clients of more than 50,000 monthly active users coming into their portal. So for the most part, don't need to be concerned about that. So I know we're getting towards the top of the hour. Let me just, I won't go as deep on some of the other scenarios, but we did another version of this webinar the night before last. It was sort of 10 p.m. Eastern time, which was regular business hours in Australia and New Zealand with Stratus, one of our partners down in New Zealand. And they do a lot of work in the legal space. And we said, hey, let's dig into legal matters and do a data room scenario around that. So I won't go deep into it, but I just wanted to sort of touch on it. It's got a lot of parallels to the loan application scenario that it just went through. So imagine, I work for a law firm. I'm setting up a new matter, which, if you're not familiar with legal terminology, a matter is a piece of work that a law firm is working on. Think of it like a project in Susie's case with Vector. It doesn't mean a case. A case means you're going in front of a judge. It could be a contract negotiation. It could be real estate, probate, estate planning, things like that. But typically there'd be a matter number in the law practice software and a matter type of what type of matter it is, who's the partner within the law firm, that's point on it, some details around it. And just like that loan application, there's the ability through this form here to say, hey, I want to create a data room for that matter. And again, I've got one that I created from that webinar 2 nights ago. So I just come into this legal matter 2024-0325. It's very much the same thing. We've got some different metadata about it. It's not projects, it's not statement of works, it's not a loan application, it's a legal matter with matter number and some details around that. But the same idea, I just need to exchange documents back and forth. And that, discovery process and document exchange is a common theme. If you've worked with lawyers, it happens a lot, and just making it an easy place to do that. Law firms historically have been slow to adopt Microsoft 365. They're often laggards from a technology point of view, but it's happening en masse now. We're seeing a lot of law firms make the move to Microsoft 365, so we see a big opportunity from this perspective as well. I did want to cover off, this is a bit of a technical side, so apologies if you were more on the business side, but there's still important points to understand here. I made them earlier, but I kind of want to reiterate them, which is yes, we are a SaaS company. Yes, we are running your portal and your version of our admin tool in our Microsoft Azure subscription. We currently run in data centers in the US, Canada, and Western Europe. Plans to expand that out. Basically, we want to respect the data sovereignty of the area that the client is working in. And most of our clients are either in US, Canada, or Western Europe currently. But the key is that all the information related to both the content you're sharing in the data room, but more broadly, the operation of our software product itself actually live in your Microsoft 365 tenant. They're all on the right side here. So when we're creating a data room, yes, we're creating a team site and a folder to store those documents. We may have an Excel that has that configuration that I was showing you for things like the metadata or the requested documents. All that lives in your Microsoft 365 tenant. And even the guests that you're inviting in and the setup of our product is all managed through your Enter ID, your SharePoint Online. We use your Exchange Online. So any emails that are getting sent out, workflow notifications or welcome to your new data room, they're coming from your email domain, from your organization. It's got your brand throughout all of that from that perspective. So it's a really important point to remember, as we work with bigger clients, they want to know about, our information security and what are we doing from a encryption and data at rest and all those sorts of things. Like, it's in your tenant. What you're already doing for your Microsoft 365, we're just leveraging on top of. So if something's not being done right, it's a broader issue in your organization. We can help you with that, but it's not a flaw in our product. It's something on your side. The last scenario, the insurance one, I don't have a demo scenario specifically pulled together on this, but I do have a little bit here that I can share. And this goes back to that idea of highly sensitive data like personal health information and how do you manage that? And I alluded to this a little bit. So we've got this group here that we've called SharePoint sensitive content. And it leverages a feature in Microsoft 365 or product called Purview, which is all around information protection and information retention. And you can build data classifications for your content that say, hey, what is our sensitivity of information? And then you can enforce different rules from a security point of view. So if you classify something as sensitive and set up a rule that says, hey, maybe we want to make sure that we force people through multi-factor authentication to access this content, that's something that we can do building on that Microsoft stack. We can even go further than that. You can encrypt the documents. You can watermark them to put confidential watermarks on them. You can enforce that people can just view them. They can't print them. They can't copy them. They can't download them, do different things. So there's a lot that Purview gives you from an information security point of view. Most organizations are not very mature in adopting those features, even though they may be paying for them in their Microsoft licensing. We like to be able to light that up and in a way that's easy to use, that doesn't get in your way, but gives you all those benefits. So just circling back full circle to the key takeaways that Logan started with. As you see through here, we want to make sure that the business is happy. The business can do business. You don't want this to be a blocker to say, hey, I just can't get stuff done because it's too hard. I need to go to IT and request things and they don't let me do things. So I'm just going to do it myself and get my shadow IT going. That's what we want to avoid. We want to say, hey, IT and compliance are happy. They know that the guardrails are there. There's templates, there's processes, there's automation, so that when people need to do these kinds of things, they get set up in a predictable way, in the right way, and IT doesn't need to get involved every step of the way, every time from that point of view. But the business is able to do what they need to do for that perspective. And done well, that's going to streamline processes. Get rid of that email back and forth and the confusion of who's got what version and who's on first and what's on second. It just, bring it all together in one portal, make it easy for everybody to understand what they need to do and where that goes. And make sure that the business controls their data and their branding and their experience through all of that. Yes, we're leveraging Microsoft 365 under the hood, but let's not make that front and center. Let's make your business front and center and have your brand as part of that. So I know we're getting closer now to the top. I don't know, Logan, if we've got other questions. We've sort of answered some as we've been going through. Just some additional upcoming things. I mentioned we're going to be busy in Europe. We're over in Wiesbaden for the European Collab Summit in May. I'm going to be speaking. We're running a booth there. Same thing with the Power Platform Conference in Brussels and Comsverse in the UK in June. So we're going to be hopping back and forth. I guess the one that we didn't put on here is the M365 conference down in Orlando, Florida as well. So from a North America point of view, we're going to be doing a big push on. We're actually launching a major new version of our product. Most of what I've showed you here today with the data room works in our currently shipping version, which is version 6, the last version released back in December of last year. But since last summer, we've been working on a completely new major version. It's got some AI features. It's got some really cool search stuff in there as part of that. We're going to be launching that out as part of the M365 conference next month in Orlando. We do have some additional resources here. So as I said, we'll provide the deck. All the links will be live in here, so you can troll through there. There's an article specific on the legal space, if that's relevant to you. There's a more general one from a confidential data document exchange point of view. And then we've got a lot, this is one example, but there's a lot of content up on our EUM site just around the external sharing in general, things you should be aware of and how you work together from that point of view. So Logan, any last closing questions that we've missed as we've been going through here?
No, I think we're all good. I appreciate everybody. I appreciate the questions coming in through the discussion.
Cool. And Susie, thanks so much for joining us here today. It's fun to get the dialogue going here and looking forward to getting all this lit up in your environment, taking it to the next level from that point of view.
Thank you. And thank you for having us.